I've tried to grow a bit of this and that, but not very successfully, I have to admit, and certainly nothing that would make a real difference on our dinner table. Today I'm setting out to learn from someone who successfully turned the garden into a food hub.
So, in our society, we have this word waste. There's so much waste out there that I don't see as waste. It's just gold that we're throwing into landfill. I think it's important to have a dream for your garden, what you want it to look like, and design's very important. So to start establishing where to put things in your garden is super important. There's no point putting a fruit tree in that's in the wrong space. That, for example, an avocado, if you put it in the wrong spot, you've got to understand your plant, whether it's a vegetable or fruit tree. So getting that idea of general things that you're going to put in your garden, where to put your compost, where to put your sheds, where to put your tanks, where to put your fire pit, where to put your lawn that your kids are going to play on. All these things, if you get a little bit of an idea of where these things are going to go, from there, once you've got that spot, I think it's about building your soil. So without really good soil, your plants aren't going to thrive. So going down to a shop and buying a bag of soil that's wrapped in plastic probably isn't the best way to start. In our garden, we've got quite a few different ways of building our soil structure up. First one I'll talk about is in our chicken run. So we've got chickens. We also have a compost system within the chicken run. So essentially we don't throw away, we won't call it waste, I like to call it the gold. We're trying to get as much organic materials into this system that I can get my hands on, essentially. So whether it's plants that are finished, we throw over the fence, the chookies eat them, they poo, they do their things, they scratch it up. All of this contributes to building your soil. It's not only plants that have just finished. We had lawn clippings, we had coffee grounds, we have scraps from the kitchen, etc., etc. Leaves that fall on the street or in our house. All of this goes into this system, and then when it's composted, it doesn't have to be fully composted, it goes back out onto this part of the garden or my fruit trees, my garden beds, wherever I want, where I think the soil might need feeding again. So that, to me, is the first step, is how are you going to start building your soil. Now, that's one way, through a composting system, having chickens. The other way we also build our soil, take, for example, this garden bed here. To fill this size garden bed would take a lot of soil if you were to go to buy it, for example. We don't do that. We use a method called no-dig gardening, which is essentially using a cooking analogy, or a food analogy. It's laying like a lasagna garden. So you're laying lots of different levels or layers of organic material, which can include paper, sticks, leaves, all the things I talked about in the compost. All that same gold can go into here, and nature composts this material and we plant straight in. So that is a brilliant, relatively easy way and inexpensive way of building your soil, and a much better way than buying bags of soil. Like, to fill that would cost a lot of money, but there's a lot of free materials. Just on our street alone, we get like grass clippings, for example. We don't have a huge lawn, but I wheel my green bin out the front, and the guy that mows everyone's lawns around here fills my green bin out. I wheel it straight through the garden, straight into this system, whether it's into a no-dig or into the soil factory, as I like to call it. Sounds a bit industrial, doesn't it? That goes into the system, gets composted. That's just one way. There's plenty of coffee around now, like getting coffee grounds, and there's so many benefits out of that. Not only am I improving my soil, it's not going into landfill, as an example. The coffee grounds, the amount of plastic that's used. I take a bucket up there, they fill it up, I bring it back to the garden. My next door neighbours, they throw their scraps straight over the fence. When they're lazy, they just throw it over there because they know the chooks are going to I might have to chop up that watermelon that's gone off, but that's fine. That's more organic material that's going into the system. We also use some bins that are placed strategically around the garden, often further away from the compost system. So when I'm ready to put that soil onto the garden, it's right there underneath some fruit trees. I lift it up, I spread it. It's an easy way to spread your soil around. So there's just a few little ways that we build our soil structure. The other one is, take for example this garden here. Once the broccoli's finished, I might give some to the chickens and put some into the compost system in there, or I'll just chop it straight back in to that garden bed. And what happens? It composts, of course. The worms do their thing. You know, everything's working underground, and the next plant that I put in is going to use that beautiful material that I've chopped back in to grow. Simple. That's just gold. Absolute gold. You know, we should be utilizing all the resources around us to create this. Most of our soil comes from our chicken run and our composting system. So we have, basically we use bales, 3 bales. This one here is sort of disintegrated, and as they disintegrate, we then just spread them through the garden. You're not going to buy that in a bag. Worms, so much life, so much gold in there alone. And that goes straight back into the rest of our garden and that's why we have so much success growing food, really. You know, without good soil, you can't really, you got to get that step right. And then we've got enough sun, we've got water, we've got tanks, or we've got town water, those elements. But without the soil, I think that's the hardest one. And then the chooks also do a lot of the turning for me. Even that's starting to break down beautifully. And keep shifting it. They have an absolute field day. It's really good for the chickens. There's so many worms in this system. People, I think, have forgotten how amazing food can taste from your backyard. You know, maybe eating food from the supermarket, sort of almost they've forgotten. And the amount of people that come into our garden and, you know, pick a mandarin or an orange and actually eat it, go, wow, that's enough motivation for people to chuck in their own fruit trees, I think. We've got 4 fruit trees here, so 2 pears and 2 peaches. A great use of space. Like, some people think you're not going to get much fruit from this little area, but take this nashi as an example. Last season we had over 100 fruit from essentially, you know, a relatively small area. We could turn our backyards into thriving espaliered orchards. You know, this lawn, once my kids grow up, that's exactly what I'll be doing. I'll be turning this into another 40 fruit trees. That's the plan. And herbs underneath, and etc, etc. We can cram so much food into our backyards, and we don't have to rely on it coming from far away. And that's going to help our planet big time.
We've reached a point where the best case outcome is widespread death and suffering, says the UN Special Rapporteur. And someone posted this meme on social media. We're basically at end game. What's about to happen is going to freak people out. Another one asked, is it too late? And someone answered, even if we stopped all of our carbon emissions completely today, we've already screwed the climate for centuries.
You know, there's so much doom and gloom in the news. It's like, you know, and I can see why people can sort of get a little bit, you know, it's powerless. But from our perspective, we've seen food as our way of contributing to making the planet a healthier place to live. We talked about all the benefits that come through that, but from a bigger perspective, I'm passionate about helping other people learn to grow their own food. That's why we do, workshops from our house to inspire and educate people to make it possible and achievable. If it starts on our street and spreads, and then spreads to the next suburb, and then spreads to the next state, and it just, that's where, all of us doing our own little individual actions, actually, I think that's where the big change is going to come from, whether it's growing your own food or, not buying things you maybe don't need. All these things, it's such a complex issue, but being conscious about all these decisions and what effect they have, on the planet, once we can engage with more people on that they can actually make a difference. You can store more carbon in soils than the oceans and the trees put together. So we're talking about mitigating climate change. If as a society we can start improving our soils again, from broadacre farming to little urban farms like mine, if we can start doing that, that's a real tangible thing that everyone can contribute to. There's so much doom and gloom and apathy, and it's like the problem's way too big. Well, when you're just focusing on this, if we all start doing this, and that's sort of why I've got into education and trying to help people grow food and improve soils, it's my little way of going, no, we can fight climate change, we can do some positive things. But even if you don't believe in climate change, you're going to grow great food and eat marvellous food and get more connected to your soil and your community. So I encourage you all to do so if you're not already. Thank you. Join the revolution. Whether it's growing your own food or whether it's, retrofitting your house or buying clothes from the op shop, all these things, they make a difference, from a food perspective, even if you can't grow your own food, you can start supporting people regenerative farming, where they're looking after the soil. You've got power in your dollar. You might not have a space to grow food all the time, but you can go out and support people that are doing good things, and that's happening in our region. So whether it's a farmer's market or local farmers that are doing some really good things for our soil, leaving the soil in a better, that's for me is sustainability. It's such a word that's just thrown around, but if we can leave things in a better state, to me that's sustainable. So this garden is in a better state than it was 10 years ago, just as one example. And if we can do that across the whole country, across the whole world, that's where the real change I think is going to happen. We can't rely on governments to do this for us. It's got to start at grassroots. So for us, it started in our where we live, our homes. We can make a huge difference. The community aspect, a lot of people don't think, you grow veggies for yourself. It's not that. Like we've got an excess of grapefruits, for example. We share those, we swap lemons, we swap recipes. Like a lot of the people just alone on this street that we've met just because of food. We've got new neighbours 2 doors up that we dropped off some tamarillos and they were amazed. And what came back in return? Some tamarillo jam. Or, these stories, they're real, they're tangible. Environmental, community, health, there's so many benefits from growing your own food. Financial as well. A lot of people think, it's expensive to grow your own food. We save a lot of money in growing our food from this garden. And if you do it well and you have success, you can have excess. You can have a super productive garden and you can share all that food in your community. So you're a winner. Once you start getting all of this lovely produce, and you might have an excess of produce coming in, what do you do with that? So we do a lot of, we bottle a lot of our fruit. We make jams, we make chutneys, we make kusundis. But the other really lovely aspect of what's happened over the last few years is how much we've started to really enjoy cooking and just being inspired to learn other methods of cooking or different cuisine or We do our own sour bread now, and not just sourdough bread. We do pancakes and crumpets and donuts, and just these little things just not only from a health perspective, so good for you, but just from enjoying food and appreciating how great food can be. Last night we had friends come around and we roasted 2 cauliflowers that we picked, yesterday. Roasted them just with a bit of salt and olive oil, and our friends were blown away. They were like, "These are the best cauliflowers we've ever tried." It's like, yeah, they're from our garden, of course they are. So there's so many benefits from growing your own food. The knowledge is there on how to create these gardens, productive gardens. I think the next step is the practical nature of that. I think we need to start getting serious about, like we talk about food security, why not actually grow the food in the city? Wouldn't that be revolutionary? Well, it's not actually. There's lots of cities doing this, so that's what's driving me at the moment. And I'm talking with councils as well about how we can not only grow lots of food for our community, but have the people involved in that process so they own it. They're inspired by it. That creates community. That creates much better outcomes. So hopefully, Geelong is a city we can start embracing these ideas and getting practical and actually building these things. That's what I'd like to see happen.